Are you on Instagram or do you participate in Instagram and really develop outbound leads through the process? I talked to Michelle Berman-Mikel today. She is the owner and founder of Berman Media PD, and she developed a program called Beyond the Method to teach real estate professionals how to actually use Instagram in a way that gets them outbound prospecting leads and gets them business. And she had some great tips on really developing these interesting campaigns that are unusual, and you're not going to see a lot of people doing them. And she specifically specializes in Instagram because she feels that that has the most potential. And it's also just one of those tried and true platforms that can offer a lot of different options, from the reels to the stories to, just posts. So sit back, enjoy, and you'll learn a lot about your Instagram and how to develop it. Hey, Michelle, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I am awesome. Thanks for having me, Tracey.
Yeah, so I want to start, with you giving a little explanation of what you do to our audience before we start into the good stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great place to start too. So a little bit of background on Beyond the Method is I own a large Instagram marketing company designed to teach people how to outbound prospect through the Instagram platform. So for real estate agents, being able to look at the platform and say, why has this not been, or how have I not been able to monetize this in the past? And kind of being able to show the writing on the wall as to why that's not happening, right? So a lot of times when I talk to people, they're frustrated with, I've been on Instagram for a long time, but I don't feel like I've gotten any business off of it, and I don't really know why. And so that kind of conversation. So about 10 years ago, officially in November, I launched a plan, if you will, in my mind to solve that problem. And then Beyond the Method was officially born in 2019. And it's just been growing. So it's been awesome.
So I know a lot, I think most real estate professionals are in some way on social media, many of them on kind of the tried and true Facebook, but you focus on Instagram. So tell me why, and why they should be on Instagram specifically.
Yeah, well, and it's funny that you say that because Tracey, I was studying some of the metrics, and I'm not a big numbers person. It's just really not my love language, but the numbers actually tell us that while there is about a 56% rate of agents that would say that they're actually using Instagram, only 46% of that 56% say that they even know what they're, or even feel like they know what they're doing. So you have half of the population that's quote on it, and then less than half of that half that actually feels like they know what they're doing. So we're still talking about only a quarter of the real estate agent population that feels like they're somewhat proficient on the platform. So it's interesting when we think about that, like Instagram was really bursting on the scene in the 2014 timeframe, and 10 plus years later, right, we're still kind of having that same conversation. So it's just funny to me, but at the same time, it's also proof as to why, in my opinion, Instagram is a platform that everybody needs to be focused on, because unlike a lot of platforms, Instagram is not going anywhere, right? Just like Facebook, I think it's a tried and true. I love that phrase you used. It's a tried and true platform that has shown that it is able to evolve despite all of the other noise, right? And I think some good examples, if we think about Snapchat, right? You don't really hear anybody talking about Snapchat as far as business is concerned anymore, right? People still use Snapchat for the significantly younger generation. But there was a time frame when that was a business revenue stream for a lot of people. That's not the case anymore. TikTok is a great example as well, right? There's a lot of people doing TikTok well, but it's really not the platform that we all know as the place that we can truly generate a business model out of, right? Some people have, for sure, and I'm not going to discount the incredibleness of that, but it's not one of the platforms, in my opinion, that's going to be around forever or be used to the level that Instagram and Facebook are. Clubhouse is a great example, right? I'm sure you were on Clubhouse during COVID, just like I was. Are we even talking about Clubhouse anymore? No. So when people ask, Michelle, why Instagram? For me, the ability to say confidently that I don't believe Instagram is going to go anywhere is one, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is that Instagram is all of the platforms in one. So if we talk about all of them, we break them down, right? Instagram has the ability to be Snapchat with our stories, right? We can post in stories and it'll go away. It also has the ability for us to build a website on our Instagram platform, which is our little highlights.
right? So yes, we can put a link in our bio on Instagram, but most importantly, those little circles, also known as highlights, become our website tabs. So I always tell people, and I get this question almost every time I'm on a call with a new agent. They'll say, Michelle, well, I'm in the process of getting my website rebuilt. Do you think I need to do this? No, you don't, right? You don't need to go spend 5-10 grand on a brand new website anymore, because if you use Instagram correctly, it really is your new website, right? So those little highlight buttons, if you think about it, each one of those can be its own tab of what you would have had on your website. LinkedIn is a great platform. I use it, but it's definitely not my primary platform. But for those agents thinking, well, why Instagram, or why is Michelle saying Instagram? Because you can do exactly what you would do on LinkedIn through the Instagram platform, right? We can share links, we can share articles, we can do all the things that LinkedIn is really known for through the Instagram space. Facebook, obviously, very similar platforms, a little bit different mentality, but still the same concept. So in my opinion, even YouTube, if we bring YouTube over, we say these short YouTube shorts or these long form videos, we can go live on Instagram and make long form. We can go do short reels on Instagram to make your YouTube shorts. So long story short, I say all of that to say that Instagram really is all of the platforms in one. So you couple that with, I really don't believe it's going anywhere, and you have a winning combination for sure.
Great. And obviously, I kind of want to speak to the audience who's on Instagram. They're not really sure what to do with it. How to get engagement, how to really get a following. So you have 4 pillars that you talk about for success with Instagram. So why don't we go through those 4 pillars first, and then we can talk about some strategies after that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna highlight 2 of the 4 pillars. I'll say what all 4 of them are, but I'll really highlight 2 of them. And there's a method to my madness there. I think that there are a lot of people out there that teach pillars, and I'm not in the business of telling people what they should or shouldn't do as far as content is concerned, but I am in the business of telling people what I can guarantee will work, right? And so there's a big difference there. So for me, what the 4 pillars really come down to, first and foremost, we're going to talk about value series. So about 6-ish years ago, I saw a massive hole in the game here where there were a lot of mortgage and real estate professionals both that were talking heads on Instagram. So they were literally posting what everyone else was posting because that's what they thought they were supposed to do. So they would go and they would look at all the other agents in their area. They would see other people that were being successful or quote looking successful, and they would R&D it, right? Or rip off and duplicate it and say, well, Tracey did it, so I'm going to go do it. And the reality is that we just added a ton of white noise to this platform. And if you look at most real estate agents' content, it's very data driven. And while data is great, it doesn't create a lasting story that is going to keep somebody coming back. So the power of Instagram, in my opinion, is our ability to storytell, and how can we make someone remember us when they're not on the platform, or remember our names to come back to when they get on the platform. So when I developed the concept of value series, that was really the premise of it, is I wanted my agents to get away from being talking heads.
And I instead wanted them to really create a unique community of their own ideal client. Instead of trying to be for everyone, they had to focus on being for their people and really leaning into the community that they really wanted to build. And so what value series is, for clarity, is one topic for the entire month that you break down into 5 sub-questions. And each of those 5 sub-questions is its own video of 40 to 60 seconds. And in that video, you are answering only that one question. And the idea is, over the course of the 5 videos, you're really telling a story throughout this individual topic. Now, here's where this gets really fun. We're not talking about real estate mumbo jumbo right out of the gate, right? I think there's a ton of value in sharing data and metrics and all of that information, but there is a way to tell the story that will, again, keep people coming back. So I want everyone listening to this to kind of envision a Venn diagram. So on one side, you have passion, and on the other side, you have credibility. And then the intersection of those 2 things is the type of content that we need to be producing. So great example. I have a client who loves houseplants, right? How many of us can agree? I love me some good houseplants. I'm finally not killing all of mine, so that's awesome. But I have a client who loves them so much. Every time I'm on Zoom with her, I swear she's got more of them in her background. She's just like, everything is houseplants, right? It's our personal love. All of her clients at closing get houseplants. She names them. It's like a whole thing, right? And so I said to my client, I said, how do we create content for you about real estate in a way that's going to help you build your community? So we ended up developing is a better word, but what we ended up developing was a series about how to move with houseplants. So literally the title of the series is what to do when you're moving with it and you own a ton of houseplants. We break that down into 5 sub questions, and then we can talk about all of the things related to that. So one, for example, what kind of questions should you ask the moving company that you're hiring to help you move if you have a bunch of houseplants, right? Like I would never have even thought to think that, right? Another question, when do you water your plants for the last time before you move? If you're going to move with your car, right, or put all your plants in your car, what are some strategies to make sure that your plants don't die, right? So all kinds of unique things. But here's the thing, is she's talking about something she loves, first and foremost. She's coupling it with a very real conversation about real estate, which is people have to move. And in doing the recording of all of these 5 videos, she's in a plant shop. She's in her car with a ton of plants around her. She's literally going and interviewing a moving company, holding a ton of plants in her arms. She's making it really entertaining. But most importantly, she's not a talking head talking about, here's what you need to know when it comes to buying a house, right? So the idea behind it is not only is she having more fun, but she is truly, truly building her community. So when you're talking about snake plants, or when you're talking about whatever the name of XYZ plant, there's so many, right? But when you're talking about these fun individual plants in your content, I mean, you guys should see the comments she gets on it, right? People are like, oh no, I just bought that type of plant. What do I do? Right? And so the entire premise of the value series is to create connection, and the connection leads to conversation. But most real estate agents, when they're producing content, they're so focused on the data and so focused on like the facts of here's what to do, that they miss the point of developing the content in the first place, which is to create connection with your ideal client, literally. Right? To make your client feel heard, to make them feel seen, to really feel like, oh my gosh, Tracey, you are my person because you get me, right? That is the point of that type of content. So value series is the first of the 4. It's designed to really create connection so that conversation happens, so that we don't just produce stale content that really doesn't seem to be doing anything for us. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is testimonials, pretty self-explanatory. The main goal with my clients for testimonials is to do video testimonials, right? So to get a lot of videos from their past or existing clients, vendor partners, people that they're doing business with, the small businesses in town that can speak to them, right? So that type of testimonial is really powerful. The third pillar for a real estate agent especially is obviously listing day. Listing day, however, doesn't just mean you're showing all of the listings that you have, because the reality is not all of us have 5 listings a month. That's just not real life for a lot of agents. But listing day, when we're posting on that day in our calendar, it means anything along the home buying pendulum. So it could be an under contract, a pending, a sold, appraised, an open house, a market update. It could be anything along that spectrum. The idea is you're just sharing something along the pendulum to show that you're doing transactions or that you're busy. Right? So even if you don't have any of your own, you don't have any active buyers or any active listings, showcase an open house that you're doing, right? Showcase a market update, showcase somebody else's listing and make sure you tag them, right? But the idea is to showcase transactional history there. And then the last pillar is lifestyle content, exactly what it sounds like. Anything and everything from your camera roll. But it is super important that the lifestyle content we share is personal to us, and it's very authentic to us, because when we start talking about prospecting, if it's not authentic to us and all you're doing is posting, professional branding photos as your lifestyle day, you're going to miss the boat, and prospecting is going to get really hard. So I always tell my clients, when you're posting lifestyle content, be willing to talk about that content in your DMs. Like, be able to know that if I post this is a conversation I'm willing to now have in my DMs, right? I post about running half marathons. My son, I post about my husband running ultra marathons, like just a life, right? Like cooking and lots of things that I enjoy, CrossFit, all of it, right? But I share that stuff because I know that that's the foundation of the conversations that I'm now going to get to have in my DMs. But most agents, I think, fall victim to, I did a branding photo shoot, so I'm just going to use all these perfect, pretty photos of me. And the reality is that doesn't help.
Definitely. Well, let's talk strategies. You gave some and when you were discussing the pillars, but what are some basics that really drive engagement on your posts?
As far as on your post specifically, the biggest thing I can tell you is that if you're not getting engagement, it's because you're not giving it, quite frankly. So what that means, right, is being able to outbound prospect. So it doesn't just mean going and liking a bunch of content, right? So that's, I think you and I, Tracey, we talked offline about this the first time we met. That's what a lot of people do. They just like go on a crazy, I'm going to like every possible thing I can see. I'm going to like heart some things in stories. I'm going to maybe leave a comment or two, but they're going to be kind of vanilla comments. But I'm going to say, yay, I did my engagement today. Well, the reality is that's not really going to serve your purpose. It's not going to hurt you, but it's not going to help you, if that makes sense. So when we're trying to drive engagement, there's a couple of things that we can do. There's some unique strategies, I will say. First and foremost, carousel photos are getting a major comeback, right? So using carousel content is so important, right? And carousel content, for those that are unfamiliar with the term, means you're posting multiple photos in one post. That's a carousel image or type of post on Instagram, as it stands separately from Reels or separately from other opportunities there. So carousels are really helpful. The algorithm likes them, so that's a good thing. But the other thing, and this is sort of a story hack, and I use this all the time, but I take a day off in my stories almost every week on purpose. So if I have something big coming up that I'm going to be sharing on Monday or Tuesday or whatever the day is, it doesn't matter. I'll take the day off beforehand as far as posting on my stories, so that when I do post that big announcement or whatever that big thing is, and then I share a story that day, it just skyrockets my engagement. Like it will literally triple or quadruple the eyeballs that hit it because I took that 24-hour period off. But as far as getting more engagement on your content, in addition to those two sort of hacks, if you will, you have to go out and outbound prospects. So I'm sure that we'll dig into this, but I have a 45-20 rule. So it means 45 comments and 20 story replies that you'll execute on a daily basis. So that means you are doing 45 comments and 20 story replies on people that you do not know that fit your ideal client or your ideal area that you are trying to do business in. So very structured. The way I teach it is it's 5 days of the week. Each of the 5 days, you have a different category based off who you're specifically trying to target. And the reality is that if you do 45 comments and 20 story replies 5 days a week, your DMs are going to blow up if you're doing it right? And there's a whole separate conversation around like what to say that I'm sure we won't have time to go into that today. But as far as what to say, that does matter, because if you're just doing 45 DMs or 45 comments and you're sort of half-assing it, it's not going to work, right? But if you're really intentional with the strategy of what to say in the 45 and you do that 5 days a week, like your DMs will explode, right? And so for that tells Instagram, hey, this person's really active on the platform. This person is active on other people's content. So Instagram is then going to go ahead and say, I'm going to share all of your content to more people because you're clearly taking the initiative to go engage with others. And then the last thing I'll say is boilerplate content, which simply means stock photo type content, right? So a lot of different organizations out there, they'll allow you to pay for like a subscription monthly where like it just auto posts on your behalf, and it's sort of generic or kind of vanilla content. A lot of it is animated graphics or sort of canvas stock type templates. A lot of times people will think, oh, well, something is better than nothing, right? But the reality is that's actually the opposite of true, because that content, as you post it consistently, and I'm speaking for everyone here, right? We've all done it. It doesn't get any engagement. You'll get like a like or two, maybe, right? And the problem with that is if you do that over a long sustained period of time and your content just continuously doesn't do well, Instagram's going to continue to shove it down the feed, if you will, quote unquote, or the spectrum of, is this account worth engaging with? So boilerplate content is not I checked the box, yay, I did it. It's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. So it's really just not worth the 50, 60, $100 a month that you're paying to have it deployed on your behalf, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I do want to go to a little bit more on outbound leads. So talk to me about, give me some success stories. Tell me some of the people you've worked with that have really learned how to do it. And give me some tips that for agents on doing it themselves.
Yeah. So outbound prospecting is all about opportunity creating, right? So I don't use the word leads in my world specifically, only in the sense of it's my job to teach you how to go facilitate an opportunity. And then it's your job to actually turn that opportunity into a lead. But leads is what the result of that is. Of course, that's what everybody wants. But the way outbound prospecting works is you have to choose specifically the types of people that you want to be interacting with. And there's a whole, structure to that, right? Of how are we doing that? Where are we trying to sell real estate, right? What are your top 5 cities? What are your top 5 sub-cities? I mean, I have a client in Houston, for example. She specializes in the Woodlands. And it's a subdivision, but it's massive. Like it's like its own city within a city. And so her entire premise is, I want to be the only agent that everyone thinks about when they think about the Woodlands, and being able to use her social presence to do that. So for her, some of our goals is to get her in magazines. Some of our goals is to get her on or in with some of the type influencer type people in her community. One great example for her that she has a meeting with them actually next week, and I'm super excited for her. But there's a massive tulip farm in that particular area. That's a very big social place. Like lots of people like to go there to take pictures and say that they went there and post it on Instagram. And this particular account has a massive following. And my client was really warming up that relationship with this lady that owns this tulip farm. And the lady then said, hey, I would love to have you come. I'd love to feature you and do an entire video series with you here at my tulip farm. And that not only does that give my client a crap ton of exposure in the perfect area for her, but it also shows that she's building relationships within her community, right? And so for her, that is an example of a massive win. Now, does that correlate to an exact ROI dollars in my bank account? No, not yet, right? But the reality is that subliminal ROI is more powerful in most cases than the tangible direct, somebody laid it in my DMs and said, hey, I want to buy a house. Another great example is I had a client who did the 12 days of giving, which is something that I teach. It's like the 12 days of Christmas on Instagram, basically. But I had a client who did this last Christmas, landed a $5,000 spread in a huge magazine in her city. They reached out to her and said, hey, we saw that you were supporting all these small businesses. We'd love to support you. They gave her a huge spread. They did her hair, makeup, like the whole thing. They made a huge thing out of it. And she was the feature in January for her city that she specializes in. So are those two things massive wins for both of those agents? Without question. So you're going to get lots of different types of ROI. Now, will there be clients that have buyers and sellers that reach out and say, hey, I want to work with you? You betcha. And Sarah, the example of the plant lady that I was telling you about, she's had several people reach out to her already saying exactly that, right? And just in the first year of working with me, she had 6 deals come through Instagram directly. There's another agent that I work with in Arizona. She's been with me for 3 years. I actually recorded a podcast episode with her because she was so wildly successful with it. But year 1, she did 7 deals off of Instagram. Year 2, she did 7.1 million off of Instagram. And then year 3, she actually stopped paying for all forms of lead gen whatsoever. She was 100% lead generating through her Instagram. She also got asked to be on the local news station through her Instagram presence. So the news station actually reached out to her through Instagram and said, hey, we'd love to have you come on. And now she's a monthly feature. She goes on literally every month. So can it be done? Yes. And the idea behind it is, are you the one actively outbound creating opportunities for yourself? And most people are not, right? Most people are passively posting and waiting for it to come to them. And it's going to be a lot harder for you to see the result that you want.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's one mistake that agents do make, or they're just, it's dry information. Like they're just giving you, I don't know, it's not fun. It's not interesting. But what are some of the other mistakes that you see that can easily be corrected?
Yeah, couple things. So one is super, super simple, and it might be a 101 for some people listening, but the reality is that it's bad, and I see it every single day still. But if I type your name and your first and last name in the search bar on Instagram and your Instagram does not pop up, you'd have not set your SEO correctly on the platform, quite frankly. Like it's just that simple, right? So I have clients who will hire me for private coaching, and as soon as I see it come through, I'll immediately go look them up. Right. And if I can't type your first and last name in and actually see your account right away, we have a problem. Right. So it's so simple, but the bold line underneath your profile photo. So when you go in to edit your profile, make sure it has your first name and your last initial, or your first name and your last full name, depending on how long your name is, and then dash whatever your primary city is, realtor or real estate agent. So simple, but it's so imperative to be able to make sure that you are findable fast. That's the first thing. The second big mistake as it relates to that is it's kind of like a twofold, but people like to put their phone numbers in the 160 characters of their bio. Waste of space, right? Because what you want is you want to make sure that your profile is set up where you have a contact button. So like if I open your Instagram right now, Tracey, I should see a contact button that I can click and immediately be calling you or immediately be sending you a text message, right? So I have it set up in my profile. If someone clicks on that, there's my work cell phone, not my personal cell, but my work cell phone. And I'm going to immediately give them the opportunity to reach out to me directly. But the problem is most people will put their cell phone number in that 160 characters. And I now, as the consumer of their content, if I want to reach out to them, I have to manually type that phone number into my phone. And that sounds silly, but the reality is we live in an instant gratification world. And if I don't have instant access to being able to do that, I'm most likely not going to do it. And then that also ties into people just, the second piece to that is they don't have their phone number anywhere, right? Because I've also seen that where if I have to scroll your content and zoom in on your open house sign or like the sign in your front yard that you, the listing you have to get your phone number, we have a problem.
Yeah, I do not have a contact me on mine at all. I don't have anything on mine. So, but what I do know is I have tried to search for real estate agents on Instagram, just in a general search, like Florida real estate agent, or something. And I don't get a lot of stuff coming up. And that just tells me sometimes I don't even look for names because I'm just looking broadly. So I think that is really smart on how you do your SEO with that. So it's all in that little description underneath your name, which mine is blank. So
yeah, it's the username and the name line, those two things. So when you hit edit profile, your username is obviously the thing at the top attached to the @ symbol, but then the name line is that bold line that shows up underneath your profile photo, whether you're looking at your Instagram on your computer or on your phone. And people just miss it. Like it's so simple, but you'd be shocked how many people miss it. So to your point, right? Like if you had somebody in the top of your mind right now, Tracey, and you go in on Instagram and you type their first and last name in and you don't get them instantly, they're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that is super interesting. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and end the podcast finding out a little bit more about you. So talk to me a little bit about your biggest aha moment. Maybe it was starting your company, maybe it was while you were building it. What has been the most impactful kind of aha moment you've had?
Yeah, I think for me that's such a good question, and I love the way you asked it. But I very recently did a webinar where the cover slide of the presentation I had was a picture of the bottom of a pool. And I did it very intentionally. And I thought, maybe this is going to go well. Maybe it's not. Maybe people will get it, or maybe it'll just land flat and I'll just laugh it off and keep going. But the reality is it went really well. And what happened was I basically created a black line approach concept that people have really been able to resonate with. And it's made it feel very approachable and made what I do feel very hopeful for them. Because I do think that social media as a whole is very scary for a lot of people. It's like a big undertaking. And my goal is to be the light for the world, not just with what I do professionally, but with my faith and with the way that I live my life. So what happened though is, and where it came to be is on the personal side, for me, I swam competitively for 22 years, and I swam all through high school, all through college. For those of us listening that are from Jersey, I swam for Rutgers. So shout out to them. But, I specialize in the mile, which is the longest possible race that any swimmer can swim, male or female. And the mile was actually not even a race available to women for the Olympics until recently, actually, until about 8 years ago. But I swam it my entire career. I was always the first person in practice and the last person out because we had to train the longest, right? And what I discovered was that I spent a lot of time staring quite literally at the bottom black line on the bottom of a pool. And it became sort of a counterpart to me But it was more than just a marker. It actually was a companion on this journey of, hey, I'm training for this mile long race, or mile race, which was 66 laps in a short course pool and 30 laps in an Olympic size pool. So the black line started to serve as a focal point for me. The lane line started to serve as a barrier to not get distracted and obviously not veer off. But it really became a visual metronome for me of, if I follow it, I will eventually get to the T that is going to tell me I'm at the wall. I'll do a flip turn and I'll turn around and keep going. And eventually I'll finish all 66 laps. And so when I discovered that I could share my passion for this sport of swimming and correlate it or create an analogy between how somebody can manage what they're doing on Instagram and create a plan for themselves, that's where the black line approach really became a thing. I'm in the process of actually writing my first book. And that's what it's about, right? Which is, you have a black line approach? Do you have a strategy that's going to keep you inside the lane lines? That's going to give you a lane to follow so that you're not distracted by the white noise. You're not just copying, pasting what somebody else is doing, but you're really building your own journey, and trusting that if you just follow the process, you will get to the other side. And so that was probably the most impactful thing for me, because when I graduated from college back in 2012, I remember calling my parents, and I have a journalism degree. My undergrad degree is in journalism and media studies and psychology. And my thought process was I was going to write a book someday. And if you're going to write a book, you better understand humans, right? Like how people operate. At least that was what my head was telling me. So I remember calling my parents very shortly after graduating. And I said to my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm going to write a book someday. I have no idea what it's going to be about. I just feel like I have something to say. And I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you when I know. Right. And 10 years later, about 3 months ago, actually, I did this first presentation with that slide of a black line on the bottom of a pool. And I had my, oh my gosh, I figured it out moment of, I do really feel like I've built a really solid process. I've had a ton of people that have been wildly successful at doing it. I am walking, living, breathing proof of it. Now I just have to share with the world what the black line approach is to it, and they can be successful too. So it was a very affirming moment for me, if I'm honest, Tracey, right? Of like, hey, I've been building this for 10 years and people are recognizing it, and people are seeing who I am for not just being a mom and being a wife, but also being someone that can really change their life and their business.
Well, we're going to end on that positive and motivational, inspirational message. Michelle, thanks so much for joining RealTrending, offering some really great insight into kind of improving your Instagram and getting more engagement and really being thoughtful in the process. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I hope it was helpful.
It was great.